So good afternoon. The purpose of this video is to show you how to type professional looking data tables for a lab investigation, and also how to use equation editor so all your mathematics in an investigation look really professional as well. So this is a Google Doc that I've got open here. And the first thing I want to show you is how to properly write a data table for an investigation. So you go to insert and you go to table, and depending on how much data you have, it's how many rows and columns you're going to select. So let's say I want a 3x3 table here. And the nice thing with Google Docs is that it will auto size the cells for you. So if you type and you feel like you need less space, all you have to do is take this nice little vertical line here and pull it inwards, or you can pull it outwards and it's going to change the size of your cell for you. And you can do it horizontally as well. Whenever you are typing a lab and you are inserting a table, you can't just call this data table. That is not an appropriate name for the data in your lab. You have to tell the reader what type of data is actually getting inserted into this lab. So, for instance, you just did your density of an egg lab. So you can say density of egg values. And let's say the first thing I want to record is the mass of an egg. So I'm going to say mass of egg. So that is the variable that I want to record, but I also want to report what units I'm recording it in and what was the uncertainty of the piece of equipment I used to collect that data. So I will say grams, and then I will say slash 0.05. Excuse me. Slash plus or minus 0.05. So that is telling the readers, and I don't need that slash there, I don't think. That is telling the readers that I'm recording the mass of the egg in grams with a balance with an uncertainty of plus or minus 0.05 grams. And then I can do the same for volume. And I can say milliliters, and that depends on what graduated cylinder you chose to use during this investigation. So I can say plus or minus, let's say 10 milliliters. And then the density, that's something that you are going to compute. I have not shown your class yet how to do uncertainties when you're multiplying and dividing, so you're just not going to have to worry about it. So I would just say here, density, and the units for density is grams per milliliters. There's going to be an uncertainty there, and you're going to learn later on in the school year what uncertainty you should put there, but for this lab, don't worry about it. So then, when you are recording your data, you need to make sure you record the same number of decimal places as you've got in your uncertainty. So let's say the egg had a mass of 35.03 grams. 35.03. Notice I don't put the G by it for grams, because since grams was already highlighted here, I don't have to put the grams here as well, because that's just redundant and repetitive. And here for volume, my uncertainty was going up by plus or minus 10 milliliters. So I can say here 50. And again, I don't have to put the units because it's already in the label of my table. And then I do some mathematics here. Let's say 35.03 divided by 50. And I can go to my calculator. Say 35.03 divided by 50. And I will have to round that to one significant digit, because 50 has only one sig fig, but it would have two sig figs if I was rounding to the one spot. So I'm going to say the density of this egg, which we know is totally false, and I'm making this all up right now, 0.7. Again, not having to put the units because the units are once again already in the data table. This data is not correct. It doesn't look a thing like yours, and that's because I'm making this up in my backyard. All right. So whenever we're doing a lab investigation, another thing that we have to do is we have to show one example calculation for how you calculated the values that you did. So let's say I wanted to show the reader how I calculated this density. I'm going to call this calculating density of my egg, of the egg. So I could do this, D equals M slash V, but that looks really unprofessional. And since up here in my data table, the slash is involved in my uncertainties, this might confuse whoever is reading that, not understanding that you're looking to divide here. So instead of typing a division symbol by using a slash, we can use equation editor. So you go to Insert, and you go to Equation. And notice now I got this little blue box down here. And when I type in there, all of my letters are going to become italicized to show the reader that I'm actually showing them how to do a calculation. And I'm going to say D equals M. And then in order to do the division, I go up here. Oh, lost my mouse again. Insert equation. I go D equals, and then I see this little button up here, math operations. I click on that, and there is my fraction, which shows me I'm dividing the numerator by the denominator. And I can go M, down arrow, and eventually I will get to, if I hit enter, V, and then I have my equation. And when I have that in there, I have to define my variables as well. So I will say where D equals density in grams per milliliter. I can use a slash here because it's a unit. Where M equals, and it's going to auto capitalize, and you don't want that, mass in grams, and again plus minus 0.05, and then V equals volume in milliliters plus minus 10. So that is a professional way to write a mathematical equation in Google Docs. Now, if you were not using Google Docs, everybody in this class for this assignment is using Google Docs. If you're using a Word document, it's still called Equation Editor, and it's under Insert Equation. Pretty much the exact same way to use it as you use it on Google Docs. So to recap, whenever you're doing a data table, title your data tables with the type of data that it contains. In the labels of your data table, make sure you put what you're measuring, what variable you're measuring, units you're measuring in, and the uncertainties. And make sure the data in the data table will have the same number of decimal places as your uncertainties. Make sure when you do the calculation, if you are adding and subtracting, you round to the same number of decimal places. If you are multiplying and dividing, you round to the total number of sig figs. In this case, it's 1 because 50 has 1 sig fig. You show one example calculation. Use Equation Editor in order to professionally write out your equations and define those variables. Hopefully this will help you come up with a beautifully written extravaganza and any other lab write-up investigation that we do in honors physics or in IB Chem or wherever you go after this. Have a good evening.